keep finding ways that we're helping partners finding either, balance in their life or focus or purpose.
Practices that are going to help improve your project management skills or your finances.
We're here to talk about setting long-term goals and then how to achieve them.
Increasing your quality, therefore becoming the best place in town to work. Welcome to Academy Live.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Academy Live. Today's topic is unlocking the keys to financial success for MSPs. We have the privilege of talking to Chris Brown for an in-depth exploration of the vital financial aspects that every managed service provider should master. We also have a brand new segment that we are very excited about that is debuting today called Sales Pitch. And a little later in the show, there'll be a subject matter expert video with Adam Hanneman. It's a sampling of his course, Getting Your Financials in Order. And now let's bring on Rex and Chris. Now, before we get started, Chris, where are you? You're not at home.
I am in sunny Florida. I'm in Orlando getting ready for IT Nation this week. So, Rex, I'm making sure everything's ready for you. I understand you're coming down. You're going to be joining me here later?
Yeah, I'll be down tomorrow afternoon. You're meeting with some of our peer groups, right? Right now?
We are. We're doing accountability meetings early this week ahead of the IT Nation. And so we're prepped and ready and all excited about that. It's a good time down here right now.
I'm a little jealous.
And Rex, you're going to be leading a session, right? Do you want to just quickly plug that?
Yeah, Larry at MSP CFO has started looking at the data, aggregated across all the different MSPs that, have their data in MSP CFO and looking for benchmarking. So we have found some interesting things and we're going to be debuting that Thursday morning.
Very exciting. And that really fits into our topic today around financials. And next week, we're going to talk about benchmarking with SLI. So very, very apt topic. Now, I want to talk a little bit about our new segment, which is called Sales Pitch. And our the sales pitch will be done by Keith Marciano. Now, we all work with Keith. He's great. Rex, can you tell a little bit about what you know about Keith, what it's like to work with him?
Yeah, so Academy, we've been working really hard over these last 6 months to really step up our game on sales enablement. And we, Jeremy Nelson, who's been on the show, and Keith have been working really hard along with James Levine to kind of put together the sales content. They've been piloting that content with our one-on-one coaching clients, but they are getting ready to bring it in a big way for the on-demand world, as well as the instructor-led courses and mixing it into the peer groups. But what better way to start introducing some of the contents than through a weekly spot on Academy Live? So I'm excited about it.
Awesome.
What do you think, Chris?
Yep.
And it's been fun. I've been working a lot with Keith. Well, first of all, Keith, you're out there and you hear this, you need to take me to an Orioles game, okay? So this is public announcement, giving you a fair warning. When I come to Baltimore, you're going to take me to an Orioles game. I want that experience with you, okay? But it's been a lot of fun working with Keith. He really knows his stuff really sharp, and it's been a lot of fun starting to ask questions and come up with answers and develop content and think through things and plan and prep for how we can present to our partners. Because it's a very common topic. We struggle with selling. We struggle with our pipeline lead development, how to close, what our sales process are. We have so many resources available. I'm really excited about where we're coming down. And so I'm really kind of proud to preview this sales pitch idea. So Bessie, hopefully you can kind of kick us off with this and kind of launching this new session that we're going to have.
100%. Keith works a lot with, and I love that little pitch right there, straight to me. We work a lot together on instructor-led courses. He has a course called jumpstart your owner-led sales, especially for our partners that are owners and in charge of sales. It's quite, when you're an owner, especially at the early stages of your company, you are really juggling a lot. And so making time for sales is a priority. And so he has really built a course around how to help partners get to that place where they're dedicating time and they're working on their sales. We have 2 other courses that are going to be coming up in the new year that I'm excited about. One's a result selling framework, and the other's around prospecting. So lots of exciting things. But without further ado, we want to hear from Keith himself. Let's play the video.
Play ball!
Hi, I'm Keith Marciano, and I'm excited to bring to Pax8 and to the IT services community sales pitch. So what should you expect from it, and why should you keep watching? So this story actually begins 50 years ago. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, and I fell in love with the game of baseball. The Baltimore Orioles had a player, his name was Brooks Robinson. Just an amazing player on the field and a more incredible person off the field. I got the chance to meet this man a few times and I was hooked. I fell in love with baseball. I actually started playing baseball at the age of 6 and I was blessed to be able to play it for the next 40 years. My second date with my wife was to an Oriole game, and yes, that was a test. She's a sports person and we became a sports family. I had the ability to coach my daughter in t-ball when she was very young. The very next year, she began her softball career. And for 12 years, my wife actually coached her in softball. She played high school softball. It was just so much fun to watch. My son fell in love with baseball as well. I coached my son through the t-ball years, into the rec league, into as an assistant coach, and spent 4 years while he was in high school coaching high school travel. I always felt like it was easier to coach high school kids than the younger kids that were always playing in the sand and such. So during the course of my playing time, my kids got to watch me play. So I think that's probably what inspired them. At least that's what I hoped inspired them to get involved in sports. How does this relate to business? I just use my experience from baseball coaching to coach my partners when it comes to IT and their operations and sales. My background is 15 years spent in the IT services industry. I have 30 years of leadership, management, sales experience under my belt. During that time, I went to many industry events and I saw, there's a demand and a big gap in selling in the IT services industry. Typically, there's just like a mindset gap, just not understanding or having a sales training that was professional, and just a struggle with finding new business and how to build a sales team. That's why I love what I do. I love the fact that I get to share my knowledge and my experience to help people out. And if I can give them one piece of advice or information that can help them grow or scale their business, boy, I've done my job. So what I'm going to do is be able to tie baseball and selling together. They're very similar. Both are competitive. Both are team sports, right? But there's also an individual component around skill and being able to produce results. One quote that I like to use from Yogi Berra, I'll put my little spin on it. Baseball and selling is 90% mental and the other half is physical. So I hope you'll come along for the ride. You'll get to learn some things, we'll have a little fun, and you'll learn more about selling in the IT services industry.
Play ball!
Wow, I am just so excited about the sales pitch. I think it's going to be such a great addition to our Academy Live show. Rex, what did you think?
You can never go wrong with a Yogi Berra quote. I think another one of my favorites is, besides it's 90% mental and the other half is physical. I like the one, we're going to turn this team around 360 degrees. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, wait, 360 degrees? Wait, hold on. Let's stop at 180 and let's go the other direction. I'm looking forward to a lot more of these with Keith. Well, Rex, we'll be back with you shortly. for now, let's bring on our special guest today, Chris Brown. Hey, welcome to Academy Live. Great to have you here. How you doing today, Chris?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. It's awesome.
Glad to hear that. Hey, I want to start off. Tell us a little bit about you. We want to hear, give us a humble brag. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I've been in this space a long time. I've been doing finance almost my entire business career. Started out working for a large Western North Dakota trucking firm that expanded nationwide. And then in 2003, I decided to create an MSP from scratch. But of course, we didn't know how to spell MSP back then. So labored along and put in ConnectWise in 2006, and I can say just ConnectWise because it was the only product they made, and met people like Rex and started facilitating peer groups, and eventually was consulting to IT companies across the world on finance. But then I took about 2016, I took a little bit of a detour, and I started flying airplanes professionally while I was still helping IT companies across the world. And then I decided that wasn't for me. So here I am at Pax8 Academy, and I couldn't be happier.
Wow. That's awesome. I know you've got a lot of history, a lot of experience. I've seen how valuable that is. Nothing replaces experience. And looking forward to hearing a little bit more about you and some of your flying experience. But real quick, I want to get into this. Every week we have a quote. It's something we do here at Academy Live, and we always ask our guests to pick the quote and tell us a little bit about it. So if we can bring that up on the screen, Chris, I'd like to ask you to read this quote and tell us why it's relevant to you.
It's not original, but it's kind of my go-to phrase. Hope is not a strategy, and it really came to me when Chris, you can relate to this when in peer groups I was in the room with all these peers, and well, I hope this, and well, I hope that, and then I'd stand up and throw the BS flag and say hope is not a strategy. So I've kind of just stuck on that for a while.
It really resonates with me. Bessie, I'm sure you heard that. Tell me what your thoughts on it.
I actually don't know if I had heard that before, that hope is not a strategy, but it does make a lot of sense because we talk to partners all the time that are exactly your sentiment, Chris Brown, like that they are just like, oh, I hope that this works out. Hope I do this. Hope I do that. But, if you don't implement, how can you really succeed if you're not striving towards that? So Chris's on Academy Live, both Chris's. September was back to school month. October was cybersecurity awareness month. And today, in this month, we're going to be talking about money and finances. So Chris Brown, exactly, show me the money. Can you tell us a little bit about how you help MSPs understand their finances? What have you learned over the years around teaching it, and what has resonated the most with partners that you work with now?
Yeah, thanks for that, Bessie. One of the biggest things that I always come back to with service providers, people who are, MSPs that we're mainly working with, that's their main focus in business is the services part is, I tell them their single most important metric, and some of my fellow coaches disagree with me, but this is mine. Services gross margin is your most important metric, because I have yet, and maybe Chris, you or Bessie, I have yet to run across another IT provider that said, boy, I've got too much services gross margin. We need to find a way to reduce that. The bucket's never big enough. And so start, especially in the smaller growth stages where you're just starting out, start watching that metric, because it's easy to make it smaller. It's a lot harder to make it bigger.
I love that you said that. Well, it's funny. I think that's a metric that I think is used in so many ways of judging health and making decisions in a business. I remember years ago setting up the MSP Foundations course, talking to some successful partners, and really we're leveraging that, really kind of look at hiring and using that as a factor for hiring. Tell us a little bit about, I love that as kind of a story. What are some of the other common themes you see across? Let's start with, an early growth stage or low growth stage kind of company. Where do you see people starting to make traction around financial understanding? What are the biggest opportunities when people are really looking at finances?
Yeah, Chris, that's a great question. You know, starting out, a lot of times providers will get advice from somebody who's a tax accountant, and we all need those. We need somebody who's smart with the laws and can figure out, what we got to do to stay out of jail. But a lot of times they don't set up the financial statements for success in running, figure out how our our business is running, how profitable it is or unprofitable it is this segment better than other segments? So one of the things that I think everybody should do sooner rather than later is start to segment your lines of business out, separating product from services, and then separating services into your main categories like managed services or professional services. So at least we can start to get a gauge of how are these individual business units doing, in relationship to themselves month over month, and then also others.
I think that's something I've heard in peer groups before, right? Around segmenting your different areas and how it's important to do that because you can't go back as easily and resegment. Whereas if you start by segmenting, you can group them together. Is it possible to be too segmented? Can you get too detailed in that statement that you have?
Certainly, right. We mainly talk about when we're coaching companies, our partner companies on finances, is we really have four main types of services, business units. Technical services, which we think about a lot of times as reactive or break fix, and managed services, which we all know what that is. Professional services, things that we're going to do on some kind of scoped arrangement. And then not many people do this anymore, but back in the day, a lot of people did shared infrastructure where they build out infrastructure for their clients to use. So those are the main four services types of revenue. And then segmenting away for a fifth one is your product revenue. So getting those into those different areas, I think, is granular enough. And then there's lots of ways to analyze the data contained, within those buckets.
And if we kind of take that progression as businesses, MSPs start to grow and get bigger and expand, what do you see are some of the next steps in financial understanding as businesses start to achieve the next growth stages?
Yeah, just always getting better, right? Tweaking as they get better, they may want to start to segment out inside those buckets. They may want to get some more granular detail, better understanding how to divide up your labor, because in a services business, labor is your single biggest expense. Your people, your technicians and service managers who are providing the services, we want to make sure that their costs are properly allocated into those different business units so we can get good numbers out of that. And then we're probably going to talk about this more a little bit, but budgeting and forecasting, really starting to set the strategy up for where you're going to go in the future and how we're going to get there. So as you start out, it's more basic, just getting kind of your numbers in a row, and then as we grow, trying to look towards the future more.
Well, I want to before I ask Bessie this question. I love that again. That hope is not a strategy. I kind of joke about how businesses, if they have checks in the checkbook, they're doing okay. Then the next progression is, I have money in my bank account, but really getting a little better. And Bessie, if you can just kind of cue this up a little bit, when we kind of launched the first finance course, do you recall some of the impetus behind that? Some of the things that we were getting from our partners that drove this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that partners are like not always making decisions based on their financials, right? And so helping partners to understand even what is their chart of accounts, how do I set it up correctly? How do I look at my profit and loss statement? Some of these more basic concepts that maybe are not so basic to someone that's just starting out in their business, that's really technical in nature, but hasn't ever dove into these topics before, is so important so that partners can start to get a good understanding. And we're going to talk a little bit about these types of courses a little later in the show, but I'm really excited to share about those because I think they're really important to help partners to learn more. But I want to make
Mhm.
sure we have a little time. You mentioned, Chris, in your humble brag that you were a pilot and that you were a pilot for over 40 years. So we have some photos, if we don't mind taking a look at those, and if you could talk us through what we're seeing.
Yeah, so been flying all kinds of different airplanes throughout the years, and this is currently one of my favorites. This is my buddy's plane. He bought it and spent a lot of money fixing it up, and so this is just kind of it's called a Beechcraft Bonanza. It was made in 1967, and kind of an iconic classic design that they don't make these anymore, but they're kind of recognized throughout the world. So one of my favorite ones to fly, and it's fast and it looks really cool, and taking it all over the United States so far. And then when I was flying professionally, flew Beechcraft King Airs. So these are a couple different King Airs coming up here. There's a couple different models in these pictures, but got to fly these all over the United States from north to south and east to west, and quite capable airplanes, really fun, but way out of my pocketbook as far as ever owning one or operating one. They burn jet fuel and they burn a lot of it. So that one, this picture with flying out over the Gulf, I was headed down to Marco Island, and that's the first time I've ever been way offshore, and it kind of was a weird feeling when you look down, there's no land beneath you.
Wow.
That's what it looks like on the map. We're out there
Oh my gosh.
in the Gulf, making our way towards Marco Island, and there's Tampa coming up where all those hash marks are in the middle of the screen.
Some
Wow.
beautiful views, I imagine. Wow.
That's
That's
amazing.
impressive.
Yeah, a
Well,
lot
we're
of
gonna-
fun, but it's a lot of work flying. So I'd rather use my brain and help partners than fly airplanes anymore.
Good thing you like numbers. I mean, I think you are well suited for what you're doing, and you bring a lot of value to our partners. Now, our next segment here, I think Adam Hanneman is the Senior Academy Peer Group Program Manager. Any comments or thoughts about Adam or this course that I think you had kind of observed when you had started here as a coach?
Yeah, so Adam and I worked together years ago at an MSP in Minnesota. He was in the operations side and I was on the finance side, but we were both on the leadership team. So we spent a lot of time together and figuring out how to make this MSP better. And so as when I came on as a coach, I wanted to get a better understanding of instructor-led courses and our peer groups and all those kinds of offerings. And so I sat in on one of Adam's courses. And Bessie, just like you were talking earlier about helping these partners understand, how important finances are and how to interpret the numbers, Adam did an excellent job with that course. So it's really, really good. I highly recommend it for anybody that has any doubts about their numbers.
And we can't wait to show that. And first, we're going to bring Rex on and to hear a little bit more about the details of our finances.
All right. Oh, I'm way over in that square now. So just a quick intro. Chris and I go back to probably 2008 or 9 timeframe in HTG 12, I think it was. And I remember when we were kind of in there, we'd get out these service leadership benchmark report books, and we're going to talk to Peter from service leadership next week, but we'd get out these report books, and a lot of us would be kind of scratching our heads looking at them like, what does this mean? Not even sure which way to hold it up, right? But and then we could always rely on Chris to jump in and kind of orient us, right? Get that map oriented, hold it this way, and look here. Chris, you have any memories from then?
Oh yeah, I remember the reports came out in 11 by 17. The first ones they mailed to you, spiral bound, and then later we printed them. So Of course we don't do that anymore, but that was the old days.
But it was interesting, right? We're all trying to figure out our finances, and it was a component of our quarterly peer group meeting. And in the beginning, we kind of glaze over it. And I remember you were always just kind of like, "Hey, let's take a look at this, Rex. What's going on with your direct labor here?" And I, on one hand, I hated the accountability, but on the other hand, I loved it. So.
Yeah. I think we all did.
I wanted to ask Chris, like, in coaching, I love that, like what you said at the beginning about gross service margin, the importance of that is kind of being a key metric. I, I like to stay very positive, but I kind of like to know what are the opportunities? Where do you see common trends? I guess the question really is common mistakes that you see MSPs make when looking at their finances or going to make decisions based on their finances.
Yeah, and if we could key up that slide deck, it just got a couple of quick numbers I wanted to show. But this is the biggest thing. When you talk about mistakes, Chris, it's the top performers in the managed service providers. They have their overall gross margin is 43% versus a typical somebody in the industry is at about 27%. Depending on the size of your company, that can be a huge amount of dollars. And
this is all gross margin, including product resale, right?
All gross margin, including product. And if we flip to the next slide, so I'm going to get to my point here in a second, we'll talk about the services gross margin. You can still see a 10% difference. And then if we look at just for managed service providers, we look at the difference is still 9%. And finally, the professional services, this is managed service providers doing professional services. There is a huge delta between the top managed service providers doing a 38% margin on projects and firms that focus in professional services, they get nearly a 51% gross margin. So what this means to me is pricing. When we talk about the typical versus the top performers, the typicals a lot of times will load in products and, hey, we need another tool, but they never raise the price and the gross margin just declines. And so that's that. What I talked about at the top is having that bucket big enough, and nobody ever says, boy, I'm making too much gross margin, I better add some more tools in. So biggest mistake is not pricing properly and not accounting for tool costs.
Yeah, if you're going to spend $1 on a tool, you got to offset it with $3 of labor savings, right? In order to maintain your margin percentage,
right? Or increase the price.
And I'll just add, it's funny in a lot of conversations. I think a lack of understanding around what things truly cost, right? I remember at Momentum we had a great presentation. We were talking about security and adding things to a stack, and if you could talk a little bit about what the true cost of some of the tools are. Talk about the impact of labor on really assessing cost to determine margin. Do you mind if it's kind of threw you on the spot and help us out with some of those conversations?
Yeah, and not to throw anybody in the bus, so this is a little bit of an analogy based on some recent partner conversations, but we'll get into a conversation. Boy, the services gross margin isn't very good. Yeah, but I'm charging $150 a user or whatever, and we start to dive into it as coaches and look and twist and peel it open and find out, well, yeah, they're charging $150 a user, which sounds really good if that's all labor. $50 of that is tool costs, various things, and maybe they're throwing in Microsoft 365 or something very expensive. And let's say their tool costs are $50. Now they have $100 left for service. And if their quote unquote rack rate, what they would bill for somebody just coming in off the street is $150 an hour, which is probably still low. They have 3/4 of an hour available to work on that one user per month, or they're going to start to be going downhill into the red. So it happens very quickly. 150 sounded really good until we dissected it.
Mm-hmm. Good example. Makes sense.
Yeah, this is this month as we head into November, right? We're approaching the end of the year. The reason I wanted to have the Academy live kind of focus on the financial aspects of running the business through November is because many of us might be realizing we're not going to hit those financial goals that we set. Many of us maybe never even set goals, but it's also the time of year where we should be thinking about next year's budget, right? Like what kind of revenue are we going to do next year, and how are we going to manage our costs and expenses going into next year? And one of the things I wanted to highlight today, and Chris, I want to talk to you a little bit about this, is it's not just segmenting the revenue, right? We have to segment the costs between technical, professional, managed services, product resale, and a subcomponent of that, right near and dear to Pax8's heart, would be the cloud resale component. But we need to segment the revenue into income buckets, and we need to segment our labor cost into the right cost bucket, so we can understand what our margins are in technical, professional, managed services. And where we start really is with the operational stuff, right? I've got one engineer. Part of their day they're doing break fix. Part of their day they're doing projects. Part of their day they're servicing our flat fee managed services agreements. And how do I allocate that engineer's cost into the right buckets, so I can know, hey, we're doing well in projects, but we're not doing well in break fix. What do you see there?
Yeah, and that's where setting up your PSA, and there's multiple versions of PSAs now compared to when you and I, the three of us, were doing it back in the day. There was one or two, and getting that set up so then you can pull out the reporting data, because in most MSPs, until you get fairly big, engineers are doing multiple roles, and so it's really critical to be able to have good time entry, accurate data from the engineers that then we can run reports on, figure out how much time they spend in each one of these business units, and divide up their labor costs into those business units. So yeah, revenues can be somewhat easy to forecast. Labor cogs can be a lot harder. And so having some accurate data makes it a lot easier to look towards the future.
Yeah, what I really want to drive home to our listeners is the tyranny of the urgent is going to pull the service managers into doing technical work, right? Whatever the problem of the day is, their time's going to get sucked into that, when really the highest and best use of their time is to look at the financial data, realize that what they're seeing in their reports doesn't make sense, and then saying, oh, how do I make that make sense? Oh, I need to segment this data in my PSA. So I need to make sure my managed services tickets go in this queue or this board or get categorized this way, and my project tickets get categorized this way. That way I can have something to key on in a report, right? And that means I got to do what everybody hates. I got to go to work on changing process, right? And when I change process, I'm going to lower employee satisfaction. And I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but if I'm going to change process, I need to understand the best practice. Academy's got a ton of documents, so do your peer groups, whether it's Pax8 or not. So do your PSA vendors. There's lots of places you can get best practice. Understand the best practice, take it in and document your way, train your team, implement the new process, and then inspect what you expect. And that's the highest and best use of these service managers' time, so that they can get this accurate financial information, so that we can do reporting, so we can do benchmarking, so we can study the numbers, so we can make business decisions. And I just, always fear this time of year, people are making decisions off of bad data. And Chris, Chris Brown, I like your comments on that. And then I'm hoping that they can break out of the tyranny of the urgent and work on the processes that create the good data. I don't know. Any thoughts?
Oh yeah, tons of thoughts. So one thing, you touched on there are five phases as we go through and implement a new process. And I see, you talk about the tyranny of the urgent. I see a lot of times people will do steps 1, 2, and 3. Service manager will see, oh yeah, we got to do this. They find out, they dig around, they get a best practice from a peer group or something, they implement it, and then they go back to working on tickets again. They never bothered to train anybody, and they never bothered to follow up and inspect on it and retrain, and so it never works. And so then they're just back at the same thing again, working, trying to figure out what's wrong. The one thing I'll touch on with forecasting is there's I'm a big fan of trying to figure out both when you're doing some data forecasting. I'm not a fan of increasing budgets or doing forecasting by percentages. We don't add clients by percentages. We don't add people by percentages. You might add some cloud product by percentages, but for the most part, you're going to bring on an agreement, you're going to lose an agreement, you're going to bring on an employee, you're going to change their pay. And so trying to do some forecasting and budgeting with real numbers instead of just taking a swag and saying, yep, we're going to grow by 5% next year. I don't even know what that means. How many clients are you going to bring on, and can you even process, the number of onboardings that means?
Right.
Which,
So, Chris, I'm going to come to you with a question. Kaiser, so in your MSP, you were faced with this same stuff, right? So what did it, like, how did you break away from the tyranny of the urgent so you could start to work on your numbers? Like, you had probably the most recent experience of any of us working on that stuff.
Yeah, for me, it was having dedicated finance professionals that you could start to lean on. So even if they weren't full-blown CFO, doing, maybe hiring somebody to be a fractional CFO, because a lot of times people will get bogged down in doing the books and the numbers and pay bills and pay people and receive product and all those things that happen on a daily basis, and we forget about the strategy part of it. So having somebody that can do chief financial officer work, and to me, that's all strategy, all forward looking, can really help out, even if it's just for part of a year or part of a month or part of a week, however often your firm needs it, how big you are, that really helps. Or if you have somebody that's really a top level finance professional, get them some coaching to become aware of that mindset, the difference between a controller, bookkeeper, and a CFO. And if they can switch those hats out on a weekly basis and spend some time on the strategy, that really makes a difference.
Totally agree. Kaiser, what do you think?
Well, I think, what I want to do, I'm gonna deflect your question and move over to Brown, because I think, taking a step back and starting with why. So we're talking about the finance. You should do this. You just tell us a bit about why. I want to hear some success stories. What are some success stories you've seen in coaching or with partners where changes in the way they look at their finances have led to greater success, either making better decisions and understanding things, or increasing power, or making changes more effectively? Give us a little bit of the why we should take the time and effort to not get caught in the tyranny of the urgent, to work on strategy, particularly in finances.
Yeah, so assuming everybody's got their numbers right and you're getting good data and you can rely on that, that's all great, but that's all rearward looking, right? The month ends, we look at the numbers and say, yay, we did good, but we really don't know if that's leading us to any goals or not. So all the successes I've seen, and I've seen some successes. One firm I think about, when I first met those guys in 2007, they were like three people and 900,000, and today they're 100 plus and over 25 million in revenue. And it's all by planning and keep forecasting, and we're going to do this, and the sales team says we can do X, and so we're going to load that into our forecasting tool, and then we hold the sales team accountable, and we're going to add this number of staff, or we're going to maintain this % margin in services, and all those things. Plan it out and try your best to accomplish those goals, knowing that sometimes it's a twisty route, right? It's not always just a straight line, but at least you're making a plan and you're executing against that plan. And that's where I've seen the biggest successes. People who don't do that, they can stay at the same level they are, but they might not move ahead very fast.
So not rely on hope is kind of what I'm hearing a message.
Yeah. I had a graphic, if you want to show it quick. There was 3 graphics. One, a map of the United States, and since I'm still aviation, I'm still interested in it, even though I'm not flying professionally. There was one graphic where it had just all the airports in the United States, and this is hope. We're going to fly from Bismarck, North Dakota, up by the Canadian border to Dallas, Texas. I can find Dallas because of the big orange blob. And the first one, no strategy at all. We're just going to wander around. This one is we create a plan. We know it's going to take 800 and some nautical miles to get there. And the final one is more likely, right? We're going to go across all these places. We're going to have these zigs and zags in our plan, and we're going to adjust, but eventually we're going to get there. That was, to me, even though it's not straight line, we keep planning, adjusting, and eventually we'll get to our goal.
Was that the jet stream pushing you around, or what?
Yeah. Headwinds.
Pun intended there.
Well, I kind of wanted to kind of transition a little bit and talk about some of the things that Pax8 Academy is offering, kind of look at the instructor-led courses, and kind of get your perspective a little bit on that. Can we bring up, do we have a segment? See, this is the great thing about live, right? This is thinking on your feet. This is a great example. What happens when you run out again?
I think you're looking for Adam's segment, right?
Yeah, and see, this is a great example of kind of just thinking on your feet. But Chris, we talk about partner enablement. What are some of the best things that you've seen, resources available for our partners to tap into to learn more about finance? Where should they get started? What are the things that you can point our partners to increase their financial acumen?
Yep. So we have on-demand courses available. We also have the instructor-led course that from Adam. It's extremely good. And if you're part of a peer group, you're going to get this kind of information as you go along through your peer group journey. We also, of course, have financial coaching and executive coaching available from the coaching team if you want a more one-on-one coach-led experience. So we've got it covered. Do it yourself to we'll walk alongside you and everything in between.
That's awesome. I appreciate all the expertise you bring, both, just your personal journey and all the work that you've put into kind of helping our partners. So hopefully this will help. I think I'm in the right spot right now. Hopefully I have got the right map and I've got enough fuel to get there. But I'd love to bring up and share a little bit of information on a course that Adam Hanneman has presented on getting your finances in order.
Thank you so much, Chris, for tossing it to me. I know we've had a little bit of a throwing back and forth to get there, but we're finally here. We're going to show the Adam Hanneman video on getting your finances in order. So take a look.
Hi there, my name is Adam Hanneman, and I am the creator of one of our courses over here at Pax8. My course is called Getting Your Finances in Order. And what I found in the industry was that everything that talked about finance assumed that your financial acumen was about here. And the reality is that most MSPs are somewhere underneath there. And so my idea was we wanted to create some content that kind of spoke to those who weren't already financial experts. And also in my travels, I've discovered that very few MSP business owners are inherently financial experts. Nobody becomes an MSP to become some financial wizard, but you do need to have some financial acumen to be successful. And you will have the benefit today of hearing from one of my mentors. Actually, Chris Brown, who's on the show today, was a mentor of mine at my former MSP. He was our outsourced CFO for a number of years, and I learned a lot from him. So I want to just talk quickly about my course today, and then we'll hand it back over to the rest of the show. So let's talk about my course. So my course really talks about the importance of financials and really kind of walks through kind of how to kind of level up your understanding of how to kind of manage your financials in your business. So the first thing we want to talk about in the course, and we'll talk about it here too, is why financials are important, because it's really good to have that base understanding, because if you don't understand financials, it's hard to understand how healthy your company is, if you're making enough profit and those kinds of things. When you have better financial information, you make better business decisions. And ultimately, at some point, you're going to want to sell your business, whether you sell to some investors, sell to your kids or your employees or whatever. At some point, you want to have some sort of valuation done on your business. And the earlier you master these financials, the better off you'll be with the valuation of your company. You'll basically be worth more because you've made better business decisions all along the way. So in my course, it's a 4-week course, and we talk about a number of different things. And the idea is we build these heavy little building blocks along the way. So week 1, we talk about terms and concepts, right? We talk about revenue and COGS and gross margin and above the line and below the line EBITDA and all the different terms that you're going to hear when you talk to anybody that's financially like in the financial game. And we relate the terms to each other. We do the math and we show at a high level how everything works together. Because when we leave week 1, we head into week 2, and week 2 is all about chart of accounts. And chart of accounts is the thing that kind of ties those terms and concepts to the actual financial data you're going to see in your systems like QuickBooks or Xero or whatever your accounting package is, right? Because a chart of accounts kind of takes those terms, makes it into the real world. So then in week 3, I actually have everybody bring their P&L statement to the meeting, and they don't share it with everybody, but we actually go through an exercise in week 3 where we actually input data into a tool that we created to allow you to, one, better understand the numbers, right? You understand your numbers better when you're looking at your own versus some random manufactured data, right? And the second thing is we actually want you to start thinking about your data visually. And part of that tool will help you create the visualizations and the graphs to really understand what's going on a trending side of the world. Then after we leave week 3, we headed in week 4, and week 4 is all about maximizing the profitability of your company, right? We talk about the levers to push and pull to make more money, make more profit, all those things, and along with a couple of things to pay attention to, right? Your cash flow and some of those other things to be mindful of, so that way you're not potentially heading down a bad path. So that's the kind of the overall version of the course. It's 4 weeks, it's an hour per week. And the big kind of takeaway is that you'll have a pretty good idea about what changes you should make within your books, when to make them. We talk about the good time, the right time of year, and now is kind of the time of the year, especially if you're going to change chart of accounts. And we talk about all these things with the idea of kind of just leveling up your financial understanding. Because at the end of the course, you're actually going to end up having a file that will allow you to visualize some of your data, which is really how those of us that spend a lot of time with data use to quickly understand what's going on in your business. Because once you visualize your data, you can find trends much easier than looking at some big table of numbers, right? Even those of us who spend a lot of time looking at tables of numbers really struggle with seeing the trends. But the minute you throw it into a graph, the easier it is for everybody. So hopefully that gives you an idea about our Getting Your Financials in Order course. We actually do have a second course coming up. It's sort of a second level financial course, and we're going to be talking about some things like your balance sheet and budgeting and maybe some advanced benchmarking and some of those things. That's a course that's coming out later in Q4, and I am privileged to be the one kind of delivering that course as well. So with that, I really hope that you are enjoying your time listening to Chris Brown. Again, he's a smart guy, and you're lucky for having him. So thanks for listening to my little spiel here, and I'll send it back to the show.
Well, I want to just thank Adam for that amazing video. He is such a great instructor, and I'm just so glad that we have him on our team. And Pax8 Studios obviously also can make everything look 20 times better than it already is when it's already at 100%. So I just loved that video and that SME segment. Yeah, Rex is repping them too. So I want to do a quick just recap what Adam was talking about. So the Getting Your Finances in Order and the Leveling Up Your Finances course, those 2 courses are available. There's the links for them in the YouTube description and in the chat. So if you're interested in checking those out, I recommend doing so. Really, they're geared towards owners or anyone that's really involved in the financials of your company. So recommend taking a look at that. And the 2 courses that he was talking about and that I just mentioned, those Getting Your Finances in Order and Leveling Up Your Finances, are instructor-led courses. So if you're new to Academy Live, I want to just give a quick positioning of where that is in the whole Academy offering. So Academy, our mission is to meet every partner where they are with what they want to learn, how they want to learn it. And so the how they want to learn it, there's really 4 main ways that Academy helps meet partners where they are with those ways they want to learn. So the one way is with Academy On Demand. So just by being a Pax8 partner, you get access to a whole humongous, ever-growing list of library of courses that are free to every partner and on demand. You could just go to
We've got over
academy.pax8.
200 courses in there now.
Yes, over 200 courses, over I think 600 pieces of material. So there's just so much in there, and it's always more and more is getting added. We hear from partners, we hear from our sales team, we hear from all different people about what kind of courses they want to see, and we build those and add them in. So if you haven't, I highly recommend giving a suggestion if there's a topic you want to see. It's likely that we'll be able to build it. So that's one, is Academy On Demand. The second is instructor-led courses, where you meet with a small group of other Pax8 partners to learn about a specific topic. Usually it's for a short amount of time. So as Adam mentioned, the Getting Your Finances in Order, it's a 4-session, 1 hour per week course. And that's like the typical, but there are some courses that are 8 hours over 4 weeks, or that are 4 hours over 1 week. So it really depends. Great opportunity to meet your peers, meet with an expert, and get your questions answered. There's also peer groups, so small group, peer group support with others of the same role and same kind of journey, place in your journey, maturity level as you, and all in different locations. So that's another one. And the last way is through coaching. So we have our operations coaching, sales coaching, and value creation coaching. So that was just a quick, if you haven't heard, those are the ways that we can help you.
Finance coaching with
And
Chris
finance,
Brown.
of course, we're here today, finance coaching. Chris Brown, do you want to share a little bit about what finance coaching is like?
Yeah, a lot of times we'll be working with a partner on their operational journey, and we've made some progress and got service tuned up, and we're making things are rolling, but we start to look at the numbers and they're just not lining up the way we think they should. So we either take a detour and we'll start doing turn the calls into finance coaching, where we go through a whole checklist of evaluating where they're at, where we think they should be, and working with the partner to make the changes. Or sometimes we'll add an additional calls per week to help them accelerate that process and get their chart of accounts set up, get their general ledger mapping set up in their PSA and then this is some technical work, but also really the coaching is helping them understand, okay, we've got these numbers now, what do they mean, what does good look like, and helping them understand what they can do then, what levers they can pull to make the changes they want to change in their business.
About how long does that take usually, or does it really just depend on the partner?
Numbers are really flowing in good, and you can start to see the results in 6 months. Yep, that's right, heavy lifting.
So on the finance side, I'm just going to share a little bit. I don't know if I've talked about this on Academy Live before, but typically when they're those first maturity or growth stage companies, the owners really don't want to share any financial information with anybody but themselves. As they move into that second stage, where it's kind of the owner and service manager running the company, we at least try to get the owner to share the gross margin, especially around services information, with their service manager. As they move into that third stage, where there's more of a leadership team running the company, we try to get them to share kind of full P&L, get the enroll ownership of the whole leadership team around the full P&L. And, we even try to get them to expose the gross margin information to the kind of the entire company. And our most mature clients, they kind of run pretty open P&Ls. They realize that everybody really wants to work for a successful company. And if it's got some financial troubles brewing, they all want to rally to help improve it. Chris, do you have any thoughts around, that whole journey that owners kind of go on about sharing financials?
Yeah, it's exactly as you describe, and if I could counsel anybody at the early growth stages, is you share early and share often. But there's a caveat to that, is you have to educate your people on what do these numbers mean. if you keep it too much of a mystery, a lot of times it's kind of like my buddy owned a convenience store down by the airport here in town, and everybody thought that if diesel was $6 a gallon, that he put $6 a gallon for every gallon they pumped in his pocket. It's like, no, that's not how it works. So the education part of working with your people and understanding them and taking them through the metrics and keep expanding that over time and make it part of your culture will pay big dividends in the long run.
Yeah, like engineers, they tend to believe, we're billing $150 an hour, they're paying me 35. That's why the owner's got the fancy car and the big house, because they're pocketing the rest of that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. But some education
When
starts to say there's not much there.
reality is, oftentimes one of the reasons the owners don't want to share their finances is they don't want the techs to see that they're actually bringing home more than the owner.
Yeah, that's absolutely
Wow.
true.
I didn't even know that could be a possibility. So even I'm learning something new there that
By
is important to
by the
know.
time you throw in all those other costs and all those expenses and the rent and the insurance and the lawyers and the website development and everything else that owner has to pay for, usually, if they're not managing those finances closely, oftentimes we have months and quarters where there's less in the bank than there was when we started the quarter.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's where he's right into the strategy part of it is if you have a strategy to grow this business and or create your wealth out of the business over time, that may be okay that you're less paid than other people, as long as you have a map that says this is how I'm going to get to my goal. Great, let's go execute on that, versus I don't know, I'll wake up one day and there'll be money there. That doesn't, that's the hope is not a strategy.
Yeehaw.
Great. Yeah, let's bring back on Chris for just our last question we have for you, Chris Brown, is around what are your top 3 takeaways? You could share a little bit about, if you want partners to remember 3 things from your call today, what do you want them to be?
Services gross margin, most important in my book. Make that bucket as big as you possibly can. Try to segment your revenue streams, both like your, not revenue streams, business units, like Rex said, both by revenue and cost of goods, so we can understand how profitable these areas are. And 3, forecast and budget early and often. Start creating budgets even when you're in the earlier growth stages and keep refining it and getting better at it. It takes practice. The sooner you do it, the better off you'll be in the long run.
That's
And
amazing.
how important are those 3? How important are those 3 things on a
Very
scale of 1 to
important.
10?
10.
11? Did it go up to 11? Okay,
Right.
good. Chris,
Well, it's been great
thank
having you.
very much.
Thanks,
Really
guys. It was a lot
appreciate
of fun.
your
I
presence.
appreciate it.
Looking forward to continued collaboration with you and you sharing your experience with our partners.
Thank you very much.
Oh,
Man, I got to tell you, getting your finances in order is something that it's hard, it's foreign. We're technicians at heart, but it's one of those things where you, especially this time of year, you got to take the time to get it figured out. What do you think, Kaiser?
Yeah, I agree. It's funny how often we talk in regards next to sales and marketing, finance is something that a lot of partners, a lot of us don't enjoy as technicians. It's foreign, it's intimidating, but I've seen when partners start to kind of connect, the amount of traction that can happen with understanding your finances and making your decisions on it is really, really powerful for the business. Bessie, how about you? What are some of your thoughts?
So earlier today, I was in a course with Ken's sponsor that's an advanced service management course. And today was all about finance and profitability, efficiency, what service managers need to think of. And he had a very similar sentiment to Chris Brown, where he said, have that one number. Chris Brown recommends that be service margin, service gross margin. make sure you know that number. Pay attention to it. Be able to say it, if someone asked you off the top of their head, you shouldn't be able to know that number. So really start diving in. If you haven't yet, take advantage of the Academy resources. So I think that's my final thought. So I just want to thank everyone so much for watching. Be sure to check us out next week. Our guest will be Peter Kajawa. He's the VP and General Manager of Service Leadership at ConnectWise. Remember, we are live every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Mountain Time and on demand always. So please don't forget to subscribe and like us on our YouTube channel. Rex, want to close us out?
Oh man, there was a lot of nuggets today, but think about them and decide what you're going to think about tonight, because you're going to do something differently tomorrow to mature your business. Bye.
Bye.